Hi, I'm Justine, and I'm here to tell you being mentally ill isn't the end of the world. I know what it's like to live with a mental illness. It's hard. You're constantly trying to hide your struggles from others, and you feel like you're weaker than others because of your illness. But that's not true. So many badasses struggle with mental illnesses, but they don't talk about them because they're afraid of being judged or thought of as weak minded. Well, guess what? They're not. We can change that by talking openly about our struggles and sharing our stories with each other in a positive light. This is why I created Mentally a Badass, so we can come together as badasses who are also mentally ill or who's had it rough in life and share our stories with one another in a safe place that celebrates our strengths rather than shames our weaknesses. I hope this podcast helps you feel less alone in this crazy life of ours, and I hope it makes your life just a little bit better. Hey everybody, welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine, and today I have the founder of the apparel company Hopeless Mope. I am super excited to speak with CJ, who is the founder. We're going to be talking about the topic of grief and how he uses grief into turning it into a powerful brand and also focusing on helping others not feel alone with their pain. So I'm super excited to chat with him today. So thank you so much for taking your time to be on the podcast today, CJ.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so on every episode of Mentally Badass, I always like to dive into your past because your past is what creates your presence and your future. So you are born in the mid 80s, grew up in the 90s, and at that time mental health was not spoken about as much. So anytime people experience any negative feelings, it was really hard to, talk to others about their feelings because they were seen as people that they didn't want to be around, like, oh, I don't want to be around that person because they're negative. So it made us people who struggle with depression not want to open up. Is there a time in your life or story that you can recall where you attempted to talk to a friend about your feelings, but you were dismissed?
Oh wow. Uh all right. That is one single story. I think the general gist of it is growing up, my anxiety, depression, it started pretty early, pretty much as early as I can remember, my earliest memories. Um, I we all have kind of our struggles in our childhood. I had some particularly big challenges in my childhood, and I think that caused maybe a lot of this anxiety, a lot of this depression that there was no name for. Nobody said
Mhm.
like, "Oh, you're just experiencing a panic attack," or you're just depressed. It was always, just pick yourself back up and just smile and go forward and just like stop being the way you are was the messaging that I got. A lot of the people that I was around, there was no opportunities to speak out about it, which really started this whole like life experience of feeling like an outsider, like a misfit and an outcast, even within the people who were supposed to be my friends and family. Like I was always kind of outcasted, and no one really had any names to what was wrong.
Yeah, actually, the way you explained it, that actually makes a lot of sense. So, since we didn't really, I mean, anxiety and depression, those names were, you know, out and about in the world,
Mhm.
but it wasn't spoken about as much, and not many people were educated on it. And
Yeah.
especially like when you're a kid in like middle school or high school, you don't really know what the word depression means or what
Mhm.
anxiety means. So when you're constantly told, oh, just pick up yourself and just like go and it's fine, just move forward. I feel like, maybe your friends didn't mean any harm, and that's probably most likely how it was. It was more of just not really understanding what you experienced. But when people are told, "Oh, just you're fine," like, kind of in a way dismissing your feelings, it just
Mhm.
makes me think like, "Why am I so weird?" Like
Yeah.
like I remember thinking that myself, and then that's when we became like an outsider.
Yeah.
And so you said that you as a kid had like the anxiety and depression. When did you seek help at all, like in when you're older?
No, it took until my early 20s, once I was married and my first child was on the way,
Mhm,
for that help to start to come. And it was when I finally started to be able to put names to it. So
mhm,
nobody, like there was no one that could tell me like, oh, what you're feeling is normal and this is why. I mean, I have to this day I have sensory issues.
mhm,
So I like putting on clothes is a very challenging thing for me, certain textures and stuff like that. But I always just thought that like that's just how life was. And it would be like just, yelling at me like, get ready. And I'm like, I can't, like, it's
Oh.
really hard for me to put on a pair of jeans. And funny enough, funny anecdote, the about 2 years ago, I learned, and this is so fucking weird. Is it okay to swear?
There's a
I
swear
I
word in
won't.
my name.
Okay, okay.
Well, the
Oh, that's
title of the
right. Yeah,
podcast.
that's right. Mentally badass. Um, about 2 years ago, right after my wife died, for some reason, I was just like, I wonder what would happen if I heated up my clothes with my hair dryer, and realized that that actually
Oh,
helped me to get my clothes on without
so
that like weird sensory thing that I have. But yeah, there's just no names. There was no way that I could say, hey, I need help, because I
uh-huh.
just thought this is the way that I am, and society and friends and family, they're telling me that I'm wrong to feel this way, so therefore I just have to change. But obviously I couldn't. There was no way that I could change, especially
Yeah.
growing up. So yeah, it was a very interesting time. I would go to sleep in a panic, where you can't breathe and can't catch your breath, and I didn't know. I thought I was dying, so like I would go to bed every night and be like, I hope I wake up in the morning. That happened a lot during high school.
Yeah, so you definitely were experiencing a panic attack
Hmm.
possibly of going to sleep.
Yeah.
So today, like present day, did you ever get like a name for what you are
Mm.
experiencing? Like,
Yeah.
are you diagnosed with like, are you like legally diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and panic attacks?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good question. So eventually I did start to go down this path of self-work about 15 years ago. And I did get some diagnosis. I was clinically depressed for a while. That was probably one of the worst moments in my life, aside from losing my wife. And
Mhm.
anxiety, yeah, generalized anxiety, stuff like that. I have, there's so many other things like the sensory thing. I think maybe I could try to go figure out and dig into what that stuff is, and other behaviors that I have. I've thought about doing it, but at the same time, I'm just like, what really matters is just to focus on the self work and focus on the immediate thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I found that like self-work and self-development is probably in my opinion, at least for in my condition, is very like probably like the most important.
Hmm.
I feel like that definitely does help. I kind of skipped a question here, but I'm gonna kind of like go
That's
back
okay.
to it. Did you have ways like in high school to cope with your pain?
Mm. Uh, Nothing healthy. Yeah, nothing
Gotcha.
healthy. For a little while, for a few years, like heavy pot user, that
Mhm.
obviously made things much worse.
With
Um,
anxiety, yeah.
yeah, it made it so much worse. And you know, alcohol, not to an excess, but I think those were ways to escape it a little bit, even though I didn't realize that I was doing that. I think it was just um yeah, I think it was just a way to escape my thoughts, because it's the racing thoughts that are the OCD, like those racing thoughts that are very difficult to deal with, or were difficult to deal with. So yeah,
Yeah.
but there was no good ways to deal with it. It was just, I just sat with myself and just felt everything
Oh
so
wow.
deeply. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I definitely understand where you're coming from. I also kind of like feel like the percentage of people in high school, if I were to ask this question to pretty much
Mm,
anybody who struggle with mental health and I ask
yeah.
them, how did you cope in high school? Pretty
Yeah.
sure like 99% of the
Yeah.
people would say alcohol.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No
alcohol or
doubt.
some people self-harmed on
Mm-hmm.
back in the day,
Yep.
or or engage in more sexual activity, like pretty
That's
much
right.
all the things that will end up hurting our soul in the long run. But
Mm-hmm.
it's more just because we weren't really uh, educated on how to
Correct.
properly cope with things. And I really hope like what I do and what you do, that people who are in high school
Mm.
can, listen and, check out our Instagrams and like and give them like the coping like skills that they need if they feel that they can afford a therapist. Of
Yeah.
course, I always put like I'm not a therapist.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just more just like so people don't feel alone. And I
Correct.
feel like when we were in high school, I mean, I'm a little younger than you. I was born in 95.
Okay.
So I guess we're a 10-year
Yeah,
difference.
yeah, I got 10 years on you. That's all
Yeah.
right.
Well, then I want to say that you are definitely like stronger than me because I'm sure back even
Mm,
more 10 years like further
yeah,
down,
so
it was probably even
mhm.
less spoken about. And
Yeah.
you didn't like even have like social media at all. I think I
No.
had Instagram at least for a little bit in high school.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but back then Instagram was more just like selfies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's transition into chatting about when your wife passed away.
Yeah.
Can you explain how that felt to my listeners, like when it happened?
Mm. So it was arguably the most emotionally and physically uh hurtful thing that I've ever been through. So to kind of bring that full circle with the questions that you're asking before, um my wife and I met in high school, our senior year of high school. And actually before I met her, I remember seeing her getting a Snapple that she got every single day in the cafeteria. And I remember telling my buddy, like, I'm going to marry that girl. And I ended up marrying her. We were engaged at 19. I waited for her to graduate college and we got married. And in the beginning of our marriage, so we were about 21, 22, somewhere around there,
Mm-hmm.
2007. Um, my she got pregnant 6 weeks after our marriage, so very, very early. We had our first child, or she was pregnant with our first child. And at that time, my depression had really hit kind of its peak. There was a lot of childhood trauma and stuff that was coming up, like I mentioned, and that's what really set me down this path. And it was her because this woman, my late wife, was the strongest, most incredible woman I've ever met in my life. And I remember this one moment, we were sitting in our first house in the living room, Christmas time. The tree was behind me, and it was her favorite time of year. And she was sitting on the couch, I was on the floor, and I just remember looking up at her and like stuttering my words as I was holding back tears and telling her like I'm completely broken and I don't think that I'm ever going to be fixed. At the time, I had a lot of suicidal ideations, and it was just too much, and I was so afraid to have my daughter come into this world, and like how would I handle it? Would I be a good enough dad? And I remember her leaping off of the couch, grabbing my face, and just staring me dead in the eyes and saying, "You are not broken." And she just kept repeating that, "You're not broken. You're not broken." And for the next couple of years, she helped me and walked me through and supported me through this, which I can only imagine was extremely difficult for her as a new mother, newly married, newly living together. We're still really young, and she handled it all like a fucking champ. So bringing this back to your question, being able to help her into her death really was like this full circle moment of like she helped me through what was the hardest time in my life at that point, and I got to help her into her death. But I mean it's only been a little over 2 years, and it just breaks me. The first night in hospice, we did hospice at our home. I remember she woke me up in the middle of the night, and we had this crazy connection where I could feel everything that she was going through. I could be in California, we're in New York, and just feel like, oh shit, like I got a call or something's wrong. She's crying. And I would call, something was wrong. She's crying. And the first night we were in hospice, everybody came over, we got her settled, we got her drugs, everybody left, my family, and then my kids were in bed with her, and I was on the floor trying to sleep. And every time I closed my eyes, I could just like it was like I was looking through her eyes, and like I felt like death coming on, and it scared me so much, and I kept like waking up, and then I heard a faint voice, and she was just like, CJ, you have to come here, come here. And I walked up to the bed, and she was like, call everybody right now, it's time. And I started freaking out. Time, time. What do you mean time? I knew. So I'm on the phone. I'm trying to get everybody back. It's like, I think it's like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. and round up everybody so they can say their goodbyes. And out of the corner of my eyes, I'm pacing the room and I see her saying goodbye to my kids. And I hear them just saying like, mommy, no, mommy, no. And I got everybody there and I kind of backed away and let everybody have their moment to say goodbye to her. And I was trying to hold it together. And finally, like 3 or 4 in the morning, but before that the sun came up, I remember crawling onto the bed and reaching over her, and it was like a hand just reached into my chest and squeezed the shit out of my heart, and it was the most physical pain I have ever been in, and I could not get out of it, and it just wrenched, and I just screamed and cried over her body. And then over the next 5 days she just slowly faded away, and most of her just kind of disappeared until she took her last breath.
Wow. I need to like take a moment for that. I like literally like I felt me like starting to tear a little bit, and I'm
Mm.
like, am I gonna start like crying on this podcast episode? I don't think I've ever cried on an episode before.
Mm.
But first off, amazing, storytelling skill. I really felt like when you were talking about it, I was able to really kind of feel like I was like in my head, I was kind of like seeing like what was like the
Mm.
actual story, and I was like feeling what you were feeling. I'm also very empathetic.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm trying to find like the right words, to
Yeah.
respond to that, um, or I'm like recording right now. But
It's all good.
oh my goodness, you've answered that question so beautifully.
Mm.
Where I'm sure that anyone who listens to that is
Mhm.
going to feel that emotion you felt.
Mm.
And it's kind of interesting how like it's just kind of like you just know, and you definitely know right then and there that you guys, soulmates
Mhm.
completely
Yeah.
100%. And you already like answered this question right after was the best way to describe the type of person your wife was.
Mm.
And you did all that
Yeah.
in
I
like,
can expound on that if you wanted me to.
yeah, if you would like, if you want to
Yeah,
talk about
absolutely.
like more, we can, talk more about her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there is one story that comes to mind,
Mm-hmm.
that really kind of puts it into perspective of just who she was and how strong she was. So humor has always been a huge part of her and our lives, right? Like it's always been that way. And when she got her diagnosis, she passed away from cancer. And when she got her diagnosis, that didn't change. Everything was like, we will joke about this, we will keep it light, and we are not gonna, or I'm sorry, she would say, we will not let life stop because of my diagnosis. As a matter of fact, the night that we knew that the cancer had spread so aggressively that there was no hope for anything, that we had to tell the kids, we sat, we talked with them, we told them, this is going to be mommy's last Christmas, we're trying to get through the holidays. And immediately after we all held each other and cried, we put on stand up comedy. Like it was just ingrained in us. But like apart from that, the strength that she endured so much pain to protect me and to protect the kids, because she knew how hard it was for me. um there was one time, I was in my office, so I work from home. I was in my office and I heard a knock on my door, which was odd because like when I'm working, it's really difficult for me if I get distracted. So I knew that like this wasn't anything, just anything. So I opened the door and my wife is standing there and her eyes were just beet red, and she's not one that's quick to cry, and I was like, shit, what is going on? And she walked in and her first reaction was like, don't worry, please don't worry, please don't cry, please don't worry. Of course I started fucking worrying right away. I was like, what is
Mm-hmm.
going on?
Right.
She was like, I need you to know that the cancer is growing again. So with her cancer, it's spread everywhere, but it would just grow and stop and grow and stop. So this was the first reoccurrence. And she said, I didn't want to tell you. So they needed to do a biopsy on my spine, which meant jamming a massive needle into her back and into her spine to get some of the tissue. And she said, I tried to do it, but the only way that I could do it without telling you was not taking any numbing or anesthesia or anything. She's like, so I tried to stay awake for the procedure, but the surgeon forced me to stop because I couldn't sit still because the pain was too intense. And she's like, so I need you to take me so that way they can knock me out to do the procedure. And she just did this over and over again of trying to protect me and my kids and really everybody from the pain that she held. And she did that until the day before hospice. She never
Mhm.
let anybody know just how incredible the pain that she was in.
Wow. And I'm sure she's looking down at you right now with everything that you're doing, to
Mm,
keep her legacy going. And I'm just like I have a thing where I like to put myself in people's positions,
yeah.
and I'm sure that's a lot.
Mm,
I wish I like knew her and I can like give her a
yeah.
hug. Like she seems like an amazing, wonderful human being
Mm-hmm.
that was just, taken too soon. And we need more people like her on this earth.
Yeah, we do.
And my heart literally breaks like hearing about people like her that gets taken, too
Mm-hmm.
soon. And we always wonder like why?
Yep.
Like why are like people like her who is just so beautiful being taken so soon? And as I was saying, I'm trying to basically say is that I think I'm kind of lost for words at this point. I feel like I was going
Mm,
somewhere and then I started like saying
yeah.
stuttering words, but I I'm very like I said, I'm very empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like I mean, I'm never ever going to know what you felt cuz I've
Right.
never like I've had people pass away in like my life like family members and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, but not like someone that so near and dear, and especially
Mm,
someone who was there for you to help with your mental health and everything
yeah.
like that. That must have been like, very difficult. The way I like to look at it is she is I mean, we all I mean, I'm sure a lot of people say, she's still with you and she's
Mm,
with you in a way of having the kind of passion of you creating, Hopeless
mm,
Mope and creating, this legacy, and you're doing this all for her.
mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that she would be the person that would be, if she was, still here with us, she would be rooting you on, like, yes, make that a prayer, like,
Mm,
yes, spread that awareness. She would be like helping you out, and you guys would
mm-hmm.
be such a like a badass like team and everything like that. So
Mm,
she is still like she's still here. She's
yeah.
still here.
Still
Not,
present.
not
Mm-hmm.
physically, but she's still here and just shown in
Mm,
different ways. So I like to we're so still talk about grief. And actually I think I already asked you, I mean, I already asked about your experience with grief, but
mm-hmm.
a lot of people experience grief very differently. Like,
Yeah.
you hear how some people may show like anger, some people will
Mm-hmm.
isolate, some people like there's like different emotions. Some people will also maybe seem like they're not bothered, which we know they are.
Mm-hmm.
How did well, out of all those things that I've mentioned, what would you say that would you probably fit best of like how you experienced your grief with the first year?
Yeah. Oh, the first year. It was a blur. Um, yeah, grief is definitely specifically with widowhood.
Mm-hmm.
There are similarities, but like you said, everybody kind of expresses it in different ways, different coping mechanisms, things like that. For me, the grief was intense.
Mm-hmm.
It was extremely intense, and going from having her to not having her, and now being a single parent to three kids, trying to work a full-time job, trying to just make like the house run just to feed the kids. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was basically like running on adrenaline. I actually, it's interesting. I was like looking at my trends with my sleep app, and the first 2 years I was averaging less than 4 hours a night of sleep. So sleep was very much affected.
Mm-hmm.
But I was running on pure adrenaline. And the first thing I did, I tore the entire house apart.
Mm-hmm.
Every room, room by room, for the next 3 to 4 months. I took everything out, put it in the center of the room, threw away everything I didn't need, put back
Uh-huh.
only what was necessary. And there was like this thing in me that was like, I need to know everything that's in the house. I need to
Uh-huh.
build systems. I need to figure out how to streamline this, and that could potentially be like the engineer side of me, but that was like my initial reaction to it. Um, Definitely like continuing the work. So I was with my therapist for about 4 years at the time. So she had been preparing me for this moment as much as it's possible to. And then just we just continued with that deep work and trying to give me that safe space to just feel what I needed to feel.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of resentment. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of fear, a ton of
Mm-hmm.
fear of uh, that I didn't do enough for my wife, fear that, you know, that I wouldn't be able to survive this, and constantly regretting and replaying in my mind every moment that I wasn't absolutely perfect for her, and just beating myself up over and over and over again, and then just crying out to her every night like, why aren't you here? I wish you were here. I want you back so bad. So that was really the first year.
Yeah, it makes sense after, losing your wife and then realizing, okay, this is all me right now. And then it
Hmm.
makes sense that your body will go into survival mode.
Oh yeah, without a
Um,
doubt.
did you get any like support and like help from like family and friends?
Yeah. Initially, and then that support just kind of dissipates naturally. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's less impacted in people's lives, right? They don't feel it day to day. Not that it's not hard for them and painful, and I have amazing friends and family, but that support goes away, especially to the level
Yeah.
what I need.
Mm-hmm.
And in that first year of why I felt like I wouldn't survive it is 6 months after my wife died. So she passed away in September. In March, which is historically a terrible month for me because my birthday's in March, and on
Mm-hmm.
my 30th birthday is when my wife got her stage 4 diagnosis. So again, I'm confronted in March. My son, my middle child, had a nerve tumor, and we ended up going through a month of testing and getting to the end of the testing with the surgeon saying cancer is a strong possibility. So I had just buried my wife, and now I'm sitting in these doctor's offices where I was just taking my wife for all her treatment
Oh my
and
goodness.
hearing cancer being thrown around again. And I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to survive this. I'm like, I barely did it when my wife was here. I don't know how the fuck I'm going to be able to do this now. How am I going to walk my child through this? And of all my children, he's the one that is most afraid of medical things and needles and all this stuff. So we get out, we're in the surgeon's office, and he was like, we're going to have to operate and pull this out from him and see what it is. And I remember that day getting into the car, and he's in the front seat, and he just looks at me and he's like, Daddy, he's like, do I have cancer? I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to answer this? And I
Mm-hmm.
had to tell him, like, yeah, man, like there's a good possibility that it might be cancer. And he went through the surgery, and um about a week later, the surgeon calls and tells me that my son is the fifth documented case ever of having this nerve tumor. It's a tumor that actually grows on the nerve, and they had to remove the tumor completely. And then he starts asking me, like, can your son swallow? Can he
Mm-hmm.
see out of his left eye? Can he blink? Can he talk? And I was like, what the fuck is going on? I'm like, can you please just tell me? And he started getting giggly, and he was like, I'll never see this again, this was so amazing. And I was like, oh, but it does he have cancer? And finally it was just like, no, it was benign. And then he had to get tested 6 months after to make sure that nothing was growing. So it was it was not an easy first year for me at all. I don't think it's easy for anybody the first year, but
Yeah.
it definitely threw me for a loop.
Wow, that's crazy to have that thrown at you like the first year. It's like, okay, you're just working, like you said, you just buried your wife and now you're hearing that word again
Yeah.
being coming out of doctors except for your child now.
Hmm.
And oh my goodness, I'm like in my head thinking, I want to give this guy a hug.
I'll take
What
those.
what state? We don't take hugs?
No, no, I said I'll gladly take
Oh,
hugs.
I mean, I was gonna say it's okay if you did it. I've met people who've like told me some dark stories, and I was like, "Can I hug you?" And they're like, "No," and I'm like, "Okay."
I'm Italian, come from a big Italian family, so we hug.
Oh,
Yeah, we're
okay.
huggers. Yeah, yeah.
I'm Italian and Cuban.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
What out of curiosity,
Yeah.
what state do you live in?
New York. Yeah, upstate New York.
Oh, I'm gonna
Yeah,
be
yeah.
in New Jersey in like 2 weeks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I
for
was just out in the city.
yeah, I'm gonna be there for like I'm originally from New Jersey. I live in
Oh,
Florida.
okay.
I live in Florida now, but yeah, I'm gonna be there
Um,
for a month. I was like, if you like lived in like New York City, I was like, I'll take a
yeah.
bus in. Let's go get
Oh,
some
yeah.
coffee or something.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do a photo shoot.
Where in Florida are you?
So currently I'm in Cape Coral, which is like
Okay.
Southwest Florida, but the
Yeah.
last 5 years I lived in Orlando,
Okay.
where that's when I worked for Disney, which actually I think I brought that story when I was
Oh,
promoting Hopeless Mope. I think that's yeah, I think I did.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
did because in Disney, when you're a cast member, it's like you can't really show your feelings
Mm-hmm.
when you're, because you have to be all bippity boppity. So, out of all of the creative outlets that people
Mm-hmm.
use, such as like music writing, painting, acting,
Mm-hmm.
poetry, what made you choose creating an apparel brand?
Oh, all right. Um, it's a, it's an interesting question. I I think I have to start more at the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
this. So apologies if this is a long-winded answer. I seem to be a bit verbose. Uh, I had been writing up until that point about the experience of my wife and I in caretaking and all these things, and various lengths and platforms, but always trying to be open about what it was like and what was going on. And then continuing that through after she died. So starting a series called The Day After Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, this really all started because we were out in California when she got diagnosed, because at that time I was working in Silicon Valley,
Mm-hmm.
and she wanted to come back home to New York so our kids could have a stable place when she died, and she wanted to be with friends and family. Totally cool, was supportive of it, but not a fan of where I live. And it was really difficult. I had a lot of resentment moving. And once I came out back home, my buddy said, "Hey, I have an extra camera. Let's just go out and shoot just to get you out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just like get you out of your head and let's go." And that was the first moment in my life. And this was back in 2015. That was the first moment in my life where I realized, oh, fuck, I can process my feelings through creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was the thing that started me down this path, where it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago that I considered myself a creative person, which is nuts because my whole life I have been doing creative endeavors. I just never felt
Mm-hmm.
that I was good enough. So why would I ever call myself a creative person? Because everything I produced was shit in my mind. So yeah, so I did photography for a while. I still do it a little bit, writing. And then there came a moment, actually, I was sitting with my therapist, and fashion for me has always been a important part of my life in different ways. So, like I said, growing up, I've always felt isolated. I've always felt alone. And even though, I'm talking a lot right now with you, if you put me in a crowd, I'm not going to be talking with people. I'm not the person that's going to be walking around and like playing the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way that I was able to express myself subconsciously as a child was through my clothes. And that meant, like, I had this crazy photo. I gotta find it. My first communion at the time, when I was growing up. Like, I had, everybody's in their nice, like, no, girls are in like their white dresses and the boys are in like their little suits. I had yellow canary pants and this like polka dot splotch red and yellow shirt. Like, I stood the fuck out like crazy.
Wow.
And I'm like piecing this shit together. I'm like, oh, like I've always used like fashion as a way to connect to how I felt, and also
Ah.
to be like, fine, you want to call me a misfit, you want to say that I stand out, I'm gonna fucking stand out then, because I
Yeah.
felt most comfortable when I wasn't like anybody else, because that's what I was feeling internally. So in with this with my therapist, she was like, "What if you take all your creativity and the designs and everything you're doing? Why don't you start a clothing brand?"
Mm.
And I ignored her for like 6 months,
Mhm.
and then in one night, Hopeless Mope was born, and
Mhm.
I created the logo, the website, I mean everything. I created the whole vision in a single night. I stayed up all night, and it was
Wow.
like everything just clicked into place for me.
Huh.
Everything that I had been trying, because I have been doing tons of different side businesses for years, and all of that skill and all of that things just came to that moment. And it's what it is for me is like saying there are moments in our lives where we wake up, we feel a certain way. You're tired, you're sick, you want to put on super comfy clothes, oversized, lay in bed. When you feel good, you feel excited, you feel happy, you're celebrating, you're going to put on your favorite shirt, your favorite suit, your favorite pants, whatever it is, to help yourself elevate those feelings.
Mhm.
And fashion for me is not what do I look like, it's what do I connect with the person that I see in the mirror. Right? So
Mhm.
it's like I have a very eclectic style. Like I have so many different pieces. And then it's also what did that person intend when they created that garment?
Mhm.
What is the design? What is the art? What is how the garment flows, the texture? Like what does that feel? What does that look like? What is it doing and what story is it telling? So I said, um, so I created Hopeless Mode,
Mhm.
but more than that, my vision for the next half of my life is
Mhm.
I want to create a space that is safe for people to know that it's okay to not be okay.
Mhm.
And we just don't have enough of that to say it's okay, you're struggling, you feel like an outcast, you feel like a misfit, like you're safe here. And that is being expressed with fashion, that's being expressed with the podcast that I'm doing, that's being expressed with like the platform I'm building. Like there is 20 things that I'm trying to accomplish, and they're all starting from Hopeless Mope and from the podcast.
You're so good at like answering these questions, and you probably I think you answered like two more
Mm,
without even
okay.
asking actually. Because I was gonna talk about, the comfort of the
Yeah.
clothing that you choose. And I said I think
Hmm.
that one thing that you really nailed on that is different from other apparel companies is that you're thinking about people's comfort and
Yeah.
their like moods and their feelings and such.
Hmm.
And the fashion thing with the communion, that is
Yeah.
so like slay. Like, oh,
Yeah.
do you have any photos?
I
I'm
gotta
curious.
find it because I want to post it so
You
bad. So I gotta
should.
go. I gotta ask my mom because this was back in the day. There's no fucking digital prints, so I gotta go find the actual print in a shoebox somewhere. But I need to get it because I keep referencing it, and I want to just see how fucking crazy it was. But there's so many instances like that where I always would just like, even like growing up in my 20s, I went to like um the old company I worked for. We went to the holiday party, and I remember showing up and like seeing the reaction of the CEO and just been like, what the fuck are you wearing? I love that shit because I'm like, yo, that's fine. Like I'm expressing myself. I'm sorry you don't want to be comfortable doing that, but like this is me. And I'm showing up in
Right.
the world the way that I feel. So yeah.
And honestly, I still like today don't understand why people care so much if someone is like not dressed like them, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
I feel like we're literally like the chosen ones. Like you and a lot of people that I
Mm,
talk with on my podcast is that our mindsets are so different. Like we don't
yeah.
want to fit in. And
Right.
I mean in high school and middle school when you're a kid, I feel like it's normal to feel like you want to fit in because if you
Right.
don't fit in, then it's like just like any human being, you want to feel important, you want to feel loved. Like that's every
That's right.
single person, no matter what. And when we were young, we think like, okay, there's something wrong with us and we're misfits or we're
Mm-hmm.
going nowhere in life. But what's
Yeah.
kind of crazy is that we're the ones that are actually doing
Mm,
amazing shit right now.
mm.
Like
That's
we
awesome.
are the ones who are like trying to change the world, having that
That's right.
passion. And that's like you and I align really well is like we
Mm-hmm.
have different paths. Like I do what I do for different reasons. Like
That's
my
right.
biggest story is like the bullying and the insecurities that I've have
Mm-hmm.
grown up. and then yours is, with the grief, and then also the same with, anxiety and depression as well.
Mhm.
And I feel like super passionate right now.
Yeah,
Like I feel
that's
like this
awesome.
is
I love it.
I feel like this is like really like motivating me
Yeah.
to, for both of us.
Oh yeah.
We're in the same, I don't know if the right word is industry.
Same wavelength, man. Come on. Let's do
I
this.
was saying, yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, it
no,
is. We both run a podcast, so
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
same.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say, like, what's the right word? When I think of industry, I keep thinking of like,
yeah.
if we're doing
uh,
this for like dollar signs, but that's like not like,
right.
I mean, for you there's dollar signs involved. For me right now, there's
Hmm.
not. But anyway, that's not the point.
I feel you though.
But my point is that, like, especially with social media, like social
Hmm.
media is like such an amazing tool, which is why I'm like so grateful that I'm able to like have it like a full-time job.
Yeah.
um but anyway, I'm kind of gonna go on, probably knowing me, I'm gonna go on a social media rant. Like, I can literally go on a rant about social media.
Go for it.
uh,
I used to
uh,
work at Facebook, so
oh, for real?
yeah, that was my first job out in California. That's what brought me out there, and yeah,
Oh,
that
wow.
was a whole interesting thing.
Oh, I feel like that can be like I feel like I would love to have this conversation with you. I don't know if it'll fit with the
Hmm.
mental health topic, but I just like to have that. I mean, we could talk about how all this stupid banning shit is getting on my nerves.
Mm. It's been a minute since I worked there, so
It's crazy. Okay. Let's talk. Let's transition and
yes.
let's talk. And I love this topic because it gets me so mad, but I like talking. Well,
Yeah.
it's something that makes me mad, but we need to talk about it. Let's talk about toxic positivity.
Yes. My
Let's
least favorite
talk.
thing.
This stuff gets me so mad, and
Hmm.
honestly, didn't even think it was a thing until I'm like realizing it's a thing. And I know you're
Yeah,
really big on that with your brands.
that's right.
So for people who don't know what toxic positivity is,
Mm.
what is a definition that you would give it?
Oh man, that's good. Um, I would say toxic positivity is forcing emotion and labeling things as negative and positive and forcing you into having a positive mindset with air quotes to the exclusion of acknowledging the hard shit in life.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like there's so much of toxic positivity on
Hmm.
Instagram. Like
Yes.
there's so much of it. I feel like I've like lost a friend because of it. I don't
Yeah.
want to say lost a friend, more like just not like aligning with each other
Yeah.
anymore. I feel like people don't understand the difference between toxic positivity and like these like content creators that are all
Mm.
about positive, good vibes
Right.
only. And
Hmm.
it's just, I feel like this is such a fun topic to talk about,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to kind of like find a way on like making it flow with you, with me and you right now.
Right.
So hold on, I'm kind of blanking out right now.
You're
I
good.
feel like I actually kind of like brought this up with another person. I kind of blanked out too, because I know if I like talk more about it, I'm not going to talk about like that particular person. So a lot of it is like showing this life
Mm.
where it's doesn't like, it makes it almost near to impossible for some people to have because of XYZ. And because everybody's different, everyone has different paths, everyone has
That's right.
a different brain, so that's where like I feel like this company is like, I'm sure it's done great things for a lot of people,
Hmm.
but I just don't like this whole idea and this whole toxic positivity and their
Hmm.
focus.
Right.
So
Yeah. I
yeah,
think
I
a
want.
lot of that comes down to in regards to like toxic positivity is it's really ascribing labels to experiences and emotions, and there's just no, like, we don't really know if something's positive or negative. Like, things
Mm-hmm,
just are at the end of the day, like they just are.
mm-hmm,
It could feel negative that my wife died,
mm-hmm,
but it just is like she
mm-hmm.
died.
Yeah,
I can't, it was painful, it hurt, it's awful, I wish she was back.
yeah,
But when we start to apply these labels to our experiences, then one, we give them more or less power than they should have. And two, we start to like say, oh, well, then I'm going to chase positive things, whatever
mm-hmm,
those things are in our mind. And
mm-hmm.
when you chase those things, it's like trying to grab onto water. Like it's just going to slip through your hands. Whereas when we have these heavy things that hit us, it's so much more powerful if we can sit with them and learn to just be with them
Mm-hmm.
and find that space within ourselves and that safe space with somebody else or with the community, and just say like, okay, this is what's happening in my body, this is what I'm experiencing right now, and acknowledge
Mm-hmm.
and let those things just be and
Mm-hmm.
let them move through you, because the
Yeah.
only way through it, or the only way to get over things, is to get through it.
Right.
We can't push these things away. And to me it's like this toxic positivity, this like over, like this over pushing towards this positive, like just smile more, is
Mm-hmm.
really saying to me, like when I was in like a depressive episode, is like, I can't smile. Don't
Mm-hmm.
tell me to smile. That's
Mm-hmm.
not going to solve my fucking problems.
Mm-hmm.
What I need is somebody to say, yeah, it sucks right now, this is horrible, this is miserable,
Mm-hmm.
let me just sit with you, let me be with you. and I've just noticed we don't do that as enough as society, and there's reasons, everybody has reasons, but a lot of it too is education. Like we don't know like what to say to people. Like my kids and I joke all the time about the crazy shit that people say to us, especially like in the first few months, and they would come to us and they'd say the things, and we just, like I said, comedy was really important to us, and we just kind of look at each other and laugh about it.
Mm-hmm.
But if we could just teach people that it's okay that you don't feel right now. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
someday you will, but even healing, that does not look like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to write my gratitude journal, I'm going to feel great. Now, like things with that, like we're bastardizing what these tools are meant to be used for, right? A gratitude journal, there is a place for that. But
Mm-hmm.
like when you tell somebody, write down 3 things you feel grateful every day and life will be better,
Mm-hmm.
then you're setting them up for failure.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I want to do, like, yes, I've had a lot of fucking tragedy in my life. Like we've only gotten into a little bit of it, but I have been giving so much. I have been given so much. And the rest of my life, I just want to give back. I just want people who are hurting and feel like I have felt, to know that, hey, you got a fucking community here. Like we got you. You're
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like we'll deal with this together. And you don't have to try to be better until you're ready. And then there's ways, and there's healthy ways to approach that healing. So yeah, so that's what gets me so frustrated with this toxic positivity, because it's like you can't just magically be better because you told me to have like this wake up and smile and feel great. Like some days, yes. Most days, I just need somebody to say it sucks and I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. I love the passion.
Yeah,
That was
thank you.
that was
Yes.
great. Yeah,
I get
you're
going
really
some.
into it. I was
Yeah.
into that. That was great.
Yeah.
There is a one thing that you said that I just love so much, and I wanted to quote it. I think you were saying, "Don't tell me to wait." Wait. It was like you were saying, like, "Don't tell me to smile. It's not gonna fucking work." I don't know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I think
That's
you were.
right.
I forgot
Yeah.
exactly what the wording was,
Yep.
but like it was so like inspirational. And it's true. It's
Mm.
like there's even like these pictures out there where people are like, okay, they're standing there like having like these hooks.
Yeah.
It's actually it's really freaking creepy.
Yeah. Life is not always smiling. Like
Yeah.
beauty is not always these what we call positive things. Like I tell
Hmm.
my kids, my daughter, she's an amazing fucking artist, amazing. And I tell her all the time, I'm like, beauty is your truth. That's the most beautiful thing. And if your truth right now is pain, then let your creativity show that pain, because that's fucking beautiful. And that's what gets me so frustrated with this, like this toxic positivity or whatever you want to label it, because it's not real. It's not real. And we
Hmm.
just need people to be real,
Hmm.
and we'll find each other, right? Like there's no reason to hide who we are. Obviously there's levels of what we're going to share. Not everybody's going to go on social media and share as much as I do.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect anybody to.
Hmm.
But you can share with the 2 or 3 people in your life and show your true self. You can share with your team at work, but like we hide ourselves and we mask ourselves, and then we don't get people's authentic selves. And then we see, oh, I'm alone. These people are doing great and I'm alone. And now I'm in more pain. But if we could all just say, hey, no, you know what? This is how I felt. I'm struggling too. Suddenly that pain doesn't feel so strong, right? It's like having a broken arm. It hurts.
Hmm.
But are you going to take that broken arm and start banging it against the wall?
Oh, wow.
Like, why would you add suffering to your pain? And that's what
Yeah.
we do when we don't show our true selves to, you know, whatever level of comfort we're willing to.
I also feel like in people who enforce like toxic positivity on people, like it's super dangerous, you know, because if
Mm,
you're always being positive, like
yeah.
every single second, you're one day gonna blow,
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know? And I mean, I have all these examples, but I can't like just throw the company under the bus.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, company, you know which company I'm talking about. Um, I mean, the reason that we have to be all like smiley and positive is just because it's part
Mm,
of their brand.
right.
And as their brand, they want to spread like hope and happiness
Mm,
and just kind of like take you away from the adult world. So in a way, it's kind of like
mm.
complete opposite of your brand.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
probably. Yeah. Most brands are complete opposite of mine, though I've seen
yeah.
a few popping up, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but since I was working for them, I had to be a product of that brand. So I always had to do that. But then when, it's like I'll be like, oh, like happy and dandy, blah blah. Like people will be telling me to like fuck off, like at work, like not
Mhm.
my coworkers, like the
Right.
guests. They would be like, because people are not nice. Like I've gotten like, so okay, that's a whole other story. Um, of how people have treated me, the guests over
Mm,
there, and how you
mhm.
telling me that you telling me to go fuck off, like
Yeah.
cool. Like,
Mhm.
all right. And then I'm like smiling. I'm like, oh God, I want to like deck you in the face right now. Like, just it
Yeah.
was like literally actually there was literally a time like after like it was time for my break and I went to the break room and I started like screaming and crying
Mm,
because I was
that's
holding it
hard.
in
That's hard.
like that. And I had to. I can't be like crying. I
Right.
can actually like I mean, once that and once, but when they do see you having like a mental breakdown, they do allow you to like stop working and like go on a walk or
Mm,
like so in the back end they do care about your mental like they do give you a lot of
mhm.
resources to help yourself
Right.
but it's like okay we're giving you the resources but you do have to kind of hide it when you're actually working
Yeah,
but
that's a challenge. You know,
yeah
and the companies have their missions, and that's great, and
yeah
it's great if they want if companies want to have, you know, we'll say more positive messages. Certainly those are beautiful and great. I think there's an authentic way to do that because without without difficulty, without challenges, without struggle, we don't know what joy feels like. Without pain,
mm-hmm.
there is no joy, and without joy, there is no
Mm-hmm.
pain.
It's a good
And I
one.
think there's ways to be authentic in happiness. And you know, I think there are brands that are doing it great, and you know, I love it. I love to see it. I just think it really comes back to authenticity.
Yeah,
And if it can be authentic, and you know, that is generic, but you know, I think people can tell. They can tell.
definitely. Okay. I'm actually really curious. I feel like your brand would fit so well into like Hot Topic. What is your opinion on
Mm.
that?
Uh yeah. I definitely have thought about like going to into stores and boutiques and stuff like that. It's on the roadmap to
Mm-hmm.
look more deeply into that and where it would go and where it's going to fit. I think, um, you know, I I'm really working to make sure that the vision is completely solid, and just kind of moving forward with that and just seeing like step by step what that's going to be and where that goes. But yeah, that's interesting. I appreciate that feedback too.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I was like when I was like looking at like all like the catalog and the clothes, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
feel like I would see this on Hot Topic, and
Yeah.
I feel like your mission would align with
Mm,
like the customer, like the market
yeah.
that Hot Topic brings in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at least when I remember when I was like shopping at Hot Topic when I was like
Hmm.
younger, I was like part of like the emo crew and all that, and I feel
Yes, me
like
too.
the elder
OG emo over
emos,
here. Yeah.
elder emos. You should have
Hmm.
totally went to the When We Were Young festival.
So my wedding song is Hands Down by Dashboard.
Oh
That's
wow.
our song. Actually, so this chain, I know you can't see it from here, but it's I had this custom made. Me and the jeweler made it together. after my wife died. So it's the engagement ring that I
Hmm.
used to propose to her, and then on the back of it is actually the lyrics to hands
Oh
down
wow.
engraved into it. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Get Up Kids. I was actually just rocking them out the other day.
That's awesome. No, I
Yeah,
honestly I'm manifesting right now for Hopeless Mope to be in Hot Topic.
let's go. Yeah, yeah. If
Like
anybody
tell
knows any contacts.
Okay, so thank you so much, CJ, for being on here. Like I said, I'm manifesting like a beautiful future for Hopeless Mope,
Thank
and
you.
you getting all those connections to get your mission out there. And honestly, thank you again for bringing your story on here. So for
Yeah,
everyone who's listening, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to put Hopeless Mope's like website, Instagram. Go and buy all everything
yeah,
on the website.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
I
appreciate it.
am like wearing it right now. And
Yeah,
honestly, I'm very authentic about my opinion about like clothes. Like I wouldn't go to CJ if I didn't like the clothing. Like if I
yeah.
thought the brand sucked, I would have not like
I appreciate it. Thank you.
okay.